In this demonstration, I'm going to build a really simple Hello World directive just to break you in and get you started with what directives look like and kind of how they work. Now, the good news is, having built controllers or services or factories, you already know a lot about what a directive is and how to use it. So a lot of the same concepts are going to carry over here. So you can see I have a really simple HTML page. We have a reference to a module. We've loaded Angular, and we have this Hello World directive script. Now, the directive script here doesn't have anything in it. So what I'm going to do is actually build out the final end solution. Now, you can start with the begin if you're following along, because it'll be all empty. But the end that you'll get will be ultimately what I'll do here. So I always like to have a wrapper function. So we're going to go ahead and do this to pull everything out of the global scope and just keep it all clean. And I like to do that with everything: my factories, services, controllers, directives, you name it. Now, we don't have a module for this really simple Hello World demo, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. So we'll just say Angular module, and let's give it the same name here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And we're going to go ahead and say we don't have any dependencies at this level. So now you're used to app.controller, or maybe you've done app.factory. Well, it's the same thing for directives. You take the module, which you can either take this app in this case, or of course we could just look it up using angular.module, and I can say .directive. Now, just like you would do for a factory, service, controller, filter, any of those, you give it a name. So we're going to call this Hello World. Now, the naming does matter. You might have noticed when you go to the Angular documentation, you'll always see things like ng repeat or ng model. But when you use it, it's always ng-repeat or ng-model. And that's kind of the convention, is that you use camel case with the naming, but then when you use it, every time the camel hump goes up here, you put a dash between it. Now, from here, I'm going to go ahead and do a normal function. We don't need anything injected here. And then inside of it, I'm going to return an object literal. Now, officially, a little later in this module, we're going to talk about what this object literal is. It's called a DDO, or Directive Definition Object. Now, we'll get into that more in a little later in the module, but for now, there's one single property I want to get to, and you already know it because you've done this if you've used routes of any type, and it's called template. Now, template allows us to give a literal string, and we're going to do hello world to get that kind of out of the way. And that would be an example of a very simple directive. Now, all this directive is going to do is literally just output the text hello world. But as we start to learn more about DDOs, the different properties you can use, and other key features, you're going to see there's a lot more that can go in here. All right, so let's go ahead and head on back over here. And to use it, just like you would with an Angular directive, we can say hello, and instead of world, it's dash world. And we now have that loaded and ready to go. So let's fire it up in brackets. And we should hopefully see the words hello world once the server starts. And there we go. There's our directive. If I jump in and inspect, well, let me scroll that down a little bit. You'll see it right there. There's our hello world. And you can see brackets kind of put its own things. Ignore that. But there's our hello world that was actually put inside of those tags. Now, that's just scratching the bare minimum, the most basic thing you could possibly do. But stick with me, because throughout the course, we're going to be building and building and building. I'll have a bunch of demos I'll walk you through of different examples of building custom directives.